With 2025 coming to a close, we have seen our fair share of toxic decks. However, the deck we're going to take a look at today, I think tops all of them. This deck has been around for a while, however, it gets some really strong reinforcements in the new Japanese set, Mega Dream. So unfortunately for us in the West, these cards have yet to release, but we'll be seeing these cards fairly soon. And what deck may I be talking about? Well, I'm talking about Monkey, Dory, and Badoo. Two of the most toxic cards in the game. And you put them together, and who would have thought you've got yourself a toxic deck? But you guys already know this, so why am I talking about it today? Well, let's take a quick look at the deck list. Aloha. So, this is the deck list we're taking a look at today. Well, one of the two deck lists we are taking a look at today. And I just want to say that this deck is fun. It is very fun to play. It is not very fun to play against. So, as you can see, we are playing 4 Monkey Dory, a 3-3-2 line of Snorunt. You might be thinking, well, what is that? Well, this is a Froslass. It is Mega Froslass, and it has a great attack for 1 water energy. This attack does 50 damage for each card in your opponent's hand. This is obviously really good, right? If we, for example, play Iono in the beginning of the game, force our opponent to have 6 cards in their hand, and then use the attack, we're doing 300 damage, just like that, right? And then if we up that with something like a Monkey Dory, moving some damage from with the Froslass over to our opponent's side, that can be very much so one-shotting things like Dragapult, one-shotting things like one-shotting a lot of things. Let's just say it's one-shotting a lot, and the main thing is that it's one-shotting a lot of these random 2 prizes. Like for example, Goldengo. This destroys Goldengo. However, this is definitely not something you would want to use against Goldengo. This is more of a tech card. This is kind of a closer. As you can see, none of our Pokemon really have a high amount of HP. You know, a lot of the time in the beginning of the game, we'll be using the Badoo to slow our opponent down with the Itchy Pollen while we stack damage on our Pokemon with abilities, thanks to Freezing Shroud, which says, during Pokemon checkup, put 1 damage counter on each Pokemon that has an ability, both yours and your opponent's Pokemon. So the idea is you stack damage up on your Monkey Dories in between turn. Essentially, if you have 1 Froslass set up, it'll be going into your opponent's turn, you'll put 1, and then coming back into your turn, you'll put another. So essentially it takes 2 damage, right? And if you have multiple Monkey Dories with multiple Dark Energy attached to it, the idea is you're going to be able to fling a lot of damage back onto your opponent's board while continuously item locking them, taking down their smaller Pokemon. Or if they are able to set up, for example, let's say against Goldengo, if they are able to set up their Goldengo and have multiple Goldengos swinging, obviously 260 HP is a lot of HP for us to deal with, but the pre-evolution of the Goldengo, I forgot the English name, the Kurekure, the little chest Ghoul guy has 70 HP, right? So the idea is we're going to stack 70 damage. Gimme Ghoul, that's the name. We're going to stack 70 damage onto the Pokemon, and then we are going to be using Technical Machine De-Evolution to de-evolve our opponent's Goldengo into the Gimme Ghouls, and then taking a knockout like that, right? So it is a lot easier to hit for 70 damage than 260, because we can just stack that 70 damage. For example, if they have 3 Goldengos out, we only need to do 210 damage, because we have to do 70 damage here, 70 damage here, 70 damage here. And we have a lot of agency with the damage because of the Monkey Dory, right? We also have things like the Maractus. Maractus, although doesn't do a lot of damage, it has a great ability that says if it's in the active position and it is knocked out by your opponent's Pokemon's attack, the attacking Pokemon, takes 6 damage counters. That is essentially 60 damage. And the attack corner does 20 damage, but the damage is not really what we're looking at. It is the effect of the attack, which prevents your opponent's active Pokemon from retreating on the following turn. So, for example, against Goldengo, we will force Goldengo to stay in the active position. We will use corner, and then Exploding Needles will, pop if they attack us and kill us, which usually they will have to do. And then that's 60 damage. We have to move 10 more damage, then we can use the de-evolution to, de-evolve them and take 3 knockouts. So we are running quite a few draw supporters because there's no real draw engine in this deck. In fact, there is no draw engine in this deck. So it is one of those decks, unfortunately, that kind of struggles with lack of a draw engine but the thing is, we have seen many decks succeed without an actual draw engine. For example, one of them is Guardy, right? The best deck in the game. Another is Grimmsnarl, right? These are decks that don't have a natural draw engine or a built-in draw engine, but still succeed due to the high accounts of these supporters. So having 4 Lily's Determination, having 4 Arvins, and having 4 Ionos is really strong. So Iono is really good. right? And so is Lily. Arven is more of like a turn 1 setup card and grab like cherry picking stuff, so it's not exactly a natural draw card because it doesn't draw us stuff. It more so grabs whatever we need, which is great throughout the game, but obviously we do need to set up, so Arven is a great setup card. But the nice thing about Lilies and Ionos in this deck is usually you get the maximum value out of it. So this deck is not a very aggressive deck. It is a I'm going to win in 1 turn, right? You take multiple turns to build up to the 1 turn where you have your pivot turn and take 6 prize cards, 6 prize cards in the exact same turn. So usually when you're using Lilies, you are using it for the full 8 cards, because Lily says if you have exactly 6 prize cards remaining when you play that card, you draw 8 cards instead of 6 cards, which is obviously really strong because having 8 cards is just broken. And obviously Iono says each player shuffles their hand to the bottom of their deck and then draws cards equal to the amount of prize cards remaining. So if you most of the time have 6 prize cards remaining, you're usually getting 6 cards out of it, and your opponent will be taking prize cards throughout the game. So for them, it'll usually be 4 to 3, and then in the later stages of the game, 2 prize cards, right? So it is a very, very strong deck core, these cards over here, with the secret box, meaning we can set up quite efficiently with something like the Artisan. And you might be thinking, well, there is this card, Pokepad, which unfortunately for us doesn't actually exist in the format right now, and I don't think it's going to be included in our Mega Dream set, is what I'm being told. So kind of sucks. But we can change this card for extra Ultra Balls, and I would also probably put in a technical machine evolution to actually get our Froslasses established. The problem is with this deck is that sometimes you actually need to find Froslasses, and Badoo doesn't really hurt some decks as much as it does others. So it's not really the ideal starter. So sometimes we can just go Froslass and then go into Badoo, right? But that's something that a lot of these Froslass decks have had beforehand. So why is this deck better now with this upcoming set? Well, I honestly think that the Mega Froslass EX is a very much so missing piece. It's a card that has not seen any play in the West due to it not existing in the West, but it has seen quite a bit of inclusion into decks like this and pre-existing decks like Grimmsnarl in the West over in Japan. No, in the East over in Japan. So the 50 damage is really good. So for example, if we take Badoo, Badoo prevents our opponent from playing item cards. So if we stack our opponent's hand with item cards because we are preventing them from playing them, so our opponent will have a bunch of cards in their hand, then we can use something like the Froslass and start swinging with the Froslass, right? Because if they have 7 cards in their hand, 8 cards in their hand, we're basically one-shotting every single deck in the format, right? And it doesn't have an ability, so the damage doesn't stack. It has 310 HP, so it's not really easy to just deal with. And it is a very good closer, so is Ursaluna. So for example, you can take the first 2 prize cards with the Badoo and the Monkey Dory targeting down little things, and then you can take your next 2 prize cards with the Froslass, and then usually your opponent will be on 1 prize card at that time, and then you can come in with the Ursaluna to take your final 2 prize cards. So it does have a little bit more of an aggressive option with this card. However, that's not to say you do need this card to win. So this is a deck that, very similar to the other deck, it's just a little bit more reliant on the Badoos rather than the Mega Froslass. It does, however, obviously have the Pokepad, so like I said, you can just cut the Pokepad and play the TM Evo instead, because, well, yeah, you do need a way to actually find your Froslasses. So the Pokepad, you could also just cut all 3 Pokepads and replace them with 4 Ultra Balls if you really want. But the thing is, Ultra Ball does kind of hurt this deck because you really don't want to be discarding a lot of stuff. A lot of these cards are really useful. For example, Counter Catches are really good throughout the entirety of the game. Bravery Charms are really good to just bump up the HP of the Badoos. A really important interaction is that since Badoo has 30 HP, if you put a Bravery Charm, that HP goes up to 80, right? And that is really important because there are a lot of Pokemon in the game that swing for 70. The most important being the Lunatone and Solrock from Goldengo. So that means Badoo doesn't actually die, and if you have 3 Monkey Dory set up, you can just consistently heal your Badoo and make sure it never actually gets one-shot. Another good example would be Fanrotom. Also swings 70, and it has a very simple attack, so Bravery Charm really helps that. Another less prevalent example, I would say, it won't come up as much, but Dragon Headbutt from Dracloak, right, and Dragapult does 70 damage. So you can keep it alive for a little bit longer, and that's something that might just win you the game, right? Just keeping Badoo alive for an extra turn. If they whiff one turn of a knockout on Badoo, that's giving you a lot more time and a lot more damage to move around, because if they have abilities on their side of the board, well then Froslass is going to take those Pokemon, and Monkey Dory is going to be able to move damage across to their side as well. So one turn in the mid stages of the game is really important. The longer you can drag out the game, the better it is for you. So against really hyper aggressive decks like a Goldengo that's able to set up really quickly, this can struggle against, but it definitely does have those kinds of win cons with, you know, being able, if for example, if your opponent ever just whiffs one turn, you know, you Iono them, you item lock them with Badoo because you're constantly item locking them with Badoo, you're Monkey Dorying, and eventually they're gonna run out of the Lunatones and Solrocks. If you slap Bravery Charms onto your Badoos, has 80 HP, they can't one-shot it, right? And Itchy Pollen is doing 20 damage, right? That might not be a lot of damage, but with Monkey Dory, you could essentially be two-shotting a 110 HP Solrock, because if you're moving 30 damage each turn, right, onto the Solrock, and then also using Itchy Pollen, you're doing 100 damage. So if you're able to find one extra damage counter somewhere, you can just knock out the Solrock in essentially 2 turns. And that's only saying if you have one Monkey Dory set up, and on the next turn you get your other Monkey Dory set up. But you can also be one-shotting this thing if you have 3 Monkey Dories set up, and with the Itchy Pollen, you can just take a knockout, right? And that is really important, because since you're item locking them, it'll prevent them from being able to get those Pokemon back into their hands. It'll prevent them from using cards like Night Stretch, right? So as the game drags on, and as they use more resources, it becomes a lot more difficult for them to actually take knockouts on something as little as a Badoo. Obviously, this deck is fairly difficult to play because you do need to have good understanding of resource management and also good understanding of the meta and what your opponent's deck is capable of. But that is about it from me today, so see ya.